I got married to a man who liked me even though I was fragile and shy. I thought we were happy, but while I was in the hospital, my husband met a beautiful divorced woman. He decided to leave me, saying I didn't work and wanted $800 a month as compensation. He went ahead with the divorce coldly. My name's Michelle, and I quietly work in an office at a real estate company. I've never been particularly interested in real estate or office work. Since I was a kid, I've been physically weak and sometimes end up in the hospital because of my internal organs, though it's not life-threatening. People were worried if I could work, especially with my health issues, but my parents suggested I try office work. I've been managing fine, even with occasional hospital stays. I've been doing well at my job, and my colleagues understand my situation. I met my husband Tony at a social gathering set up by a friend, kind of like a group blind date. I wasn't sure about romance because I thought my fragility would be a problem for anyone. I didn't date much, and before I knew it, I was over 30. My friend encouraged me, saying, "You should find someone who understands you, Michelle. Your condition doesn't affect your daily life much. Let's stay positive." So she invited me to an event. I didn't think it would work out. There were 3 men, one of whom I liked, but he seemed interested in another woman. I didn't feel particularly attractive, and the other women there seemed prettier. I had given up on finding someone there, but then Tony, who later became my husband, approached me. He was thoughtful, offering me soft drinks since I didn't drink much. But as I listened to him, I realized he wasn't the one I wanted to be close to. I dreamed of marrying someone like a top actress. Hearing his confidence made me wonder about him and even feel a bit repelled. However, despite that, he kept talking to me. He asked, "What kind of guy do you like, Michelle? Do you want to get married?" Because I was eager to get married soon, Tony kept talking to me, showing persistence. At first, I thought he was shallow, but we exchanged contacts. Surprisingly, Tony kept contacting me frequently, even asking me out. Gradually, my feelings for him grew. However, I was still worried. Why would a man with high standards and a seemingly shallow nature be interested in someone like me? When I shared my concerns about my fragile health with a friend, they explained that guys often want to appear strong and impressive at first. Despite that, my friend said Tony really seemed to like me. Believing this, I started to see Tony differently, and we grew closer. Eventually, we got married, and our first year together was truly happy. We lived in a spacious and affordable apartment that I found. Interestingly, my health issues almost disappeared, and I didn't have to go to the hospital while I was with Tony. Maybe being with him helped improve my health. Tony was considerate, and I felt confident that marrying him was the right decision. However, after a year, I started noticing changes in Tony's attitude towards me despite my weak health. ChatGPT. I managed to do basic housework, and I always cooked meals. Tony used to praise my cooking, which made me happy. But gradually, he stopped complimenting and even started complaining about the food. He'd say things like, "Is the soup a bit bland today?" Or, "I'm not really in the mood for meat today." I'm not great at cooking, so making the same tasty meal every day is tough. But until then, he never complained. Also, I can't guess what Tony wants to eat unless he tells me. I was shocked when he said he wasn't in the mood for something. Still, I loved Tony and wanted to meet his expectations. However, his attitude towards me got worse. When he came home from work, he used to cheerfully greet me with, "I'm home. Worked hard today." But he stopped doing that and instead said, "I'm tired. I want to do something fun," showing no interest. Our habit of going out on days off also disappeared. When I suggested going somewhere, he'd coldly reply, "I'm too tired to go anywhere. If you want to go, go by yourself." His behavior seemed odd, and I started feeling my health deteriorating again. It's like my body reflected my growing anxiety. Then Tony started coming home late from work and going out with friends on his days off, saying he wanted to rest. "I'll be back soon," disregarding me entirely. This behavior went beyond just being odd. It started to breed distrust in me. At the same time, my physical condition began to resemble the times I had health issues in the past. If this continued, I would end up hospitalized again, and I wanted to avoid that. Hospital stays usually last about 2 weeks, something I'd rather avoid. So I wanted to talk to Tony about our situation. One day when he returned from an errand, I asked him honestly, "Hey, you've been acting strange, haven't you? You're cold towards me. Have you started to dislike me? If you have something to say, say it. Otherwise, I'll go crazy." But he, perhaps drunk, bluntly spoke his true feelings to me, saying, I'm not doing anything with you. I haven't started to hate you, but I don't love you anymore. Are you misunderstanding something? I dated you and even married you, you know. Besides, your income is low. I'm just stressed because there's nothing fun to do. He spoke in a detached manner. His clear and blunt words left me speechless and caused deep emotional hurt. The anger and sadness that followed were overwhelming. It was as if he didn't care about me anymore. Essentially, he had reluctantly dated and married me. This reminded me of when we first met at the mixer. I realized he had his sights on another woman, which he showed interest in another man. He turned to me, the leftover one. I thought his eagerness to marry was genuine, and I was his only viable option at that time. My fears about him being frivolous and not serious about someone like me were confirmed. As these thoughts raced through my mind, my health worsened. There was one thing I wanted to correct in Tony's words, but I no longer felt the need or desire to say it. Not wanting Tony's care, I called my workplace to inform them of my impending episode and took a taxi to the hospital. After a 2-week stay, I returned home still uncertain about how to proceed with Tony. But upon my return, he said something completely unexpected. "Oh, you're back. Did you get some rest?" I was surprised. "I knew you were weak, but I didn't expect you to be hospitalized." His way of speaking showed no concern for me at all. Thinking back, he never visited me once while I was in the hospital. True, I hadn't mentioned frequent hospitalizations when we were dating, and this was my first hospitalization since we had been together. Maybe that's why he reacted this way. But his shocking statements were yet to come. "But taking it easy in the hospital, that's a nice life, huh? Earning so little and still taking time off. Naturally, your income will decrease. I don't want to continue this boring life anymore. I'm done. A wife who doesn't work is worthless. Let's get a divorce." Tony said this without any remorse. I was dumbstruck by his sudden declaration. Then he added, "Actually, I decided something while you were in the hospital. I decided to marry this woman." He showed me a photo on his smartphone of a very beautiful woman, his new girlfriend. It confirmed what I always knew. He likes beautiful women. This woman is my childhood friend. I was surprised at how beautiful she's become when we met by chance recently. He grinned as he explained this to me. Moreover, regarding our separation, he said, "The reason for the divorce is your fault. I'm the victim because I have a wife who doesn't work. So you should pay me compensation of $800 a month. It's your punishment for using me for so long." He expected me to pay despite thinking my income was low and him, the victim. How twisted could his thinking be? I was shocked to face such a situation soon after returning from the hospital, but I quickly regained my composure and honestly thought, this means I can separate from him right away. Deep down, I had already reached this conclusion. It's best to part ways with him. But divorcing so soon after getting married. Surprisingly, I was conscious of what others would think. However, his current behavior was a wake-up call. I decided to accept his demands, so I took out the divorce papers I had prepared earlier, signed my name, and handed them to him. "All right, if you have a new fiancé, I understand. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them quickly," I said. He looked surprised for once and said, "Oh, that was quick. Sometimes you do think. Now we can get divorced." He signed the papers, grinning, and handed them back to me, saying, "Don't forget about the compensation. Start transferring it by the end of this month." Then he went back to his room. He must have been surprised. He didn't expect me to comply so easily. But I had been contemplating divorce anyway. It was just a matter of time. However, I hadn't accepted everything he said. Compensation, that's another story which he'll realize later. A week or so after moving out of the house I shared with Tony, my health was stable, and I was going about my daily life. After work one day, I checked my phone and saw over 200 missed calls from an unknown number. What? Over 200 missed calls? When I opened the history, Tony's name was listed repeatedly. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel relieved because I knew why he had been calling. When I called him back, his panic was obvious. "Hey, I got a demand for $50,000 in compensation. That's too much, don't you think?" But how could he not understand without an explanation? "Well, you were cheating on me with your fiancé. While we were still married, right?" Was her name Hillary Johnson? "She's really beautiful, isn't she?" He was flustered when I mentioned her name. "What are you talking about? More importantly, how do you know her name?" The answer was simple. Why do I know? Because I hired a detective. Your actions were obviously suspicious, so I decided to ask for a little help. They contacted me right away, saying it was a definite case. They even showed me proof photos. According to the latest information, you had her stay over at our house just 3 days ago. Right, by the way, I filed for divorce the day before yesterday, so we were still married 3 days ago. Telling him this, he looked like he was about to explode. He had demanded compensation from me, but this was why I refused to accept that part. Detectives are amazing, but they sure cost a lot of money. When I mentioned that, he nervously asked, "That's true, but you don't have that kind of money, do you?" But that was just his misconception. Indeed, my salary as an office worker wasn't significant, but now I'm ready to reveal the truth. I wanted to counter when he called me low income, but I do have about $400,000 in rental income. The reason being, my father is the president of the real estate company. I work for the company passed down from my great-grandfather, which owns roughly 100 buildings and apartments. My father put several of those properties in my name, perhaps his way of showing love. So, the rent from those properties goes into my account. However, he always told me to do my best in my office job. Tony always assumed I was just a weak, low-income office worker but was quite shocked to learn the truth. Seriously, you should have said that earlier. He realized he had let go of a big fish. If he had treasured me, he could have had a lot of fun, but his misfortune didn't end there. So, the apartment you're living in now is actually mine. I just picked it because it was vacant. That's why there was no rent, but if you continue living there, the rent is $2,000 a month. Looks like your entire monthly salary is going to be gone. He always claimed I was low income, but his salary wasn't great either. That's why I chose one of my properties for him. Now it might be too late to tell him. And then another tragedy struck him. The beautiful fiancée, Hillary, apparently got to know the truth. It seems she was being claimed for compensation as his affair partner, and naturally, the engagement was called off, and she disappeared from Tony's life. Tony, having spent his meager salary and even borrowed money to impress Hillary, ended up with nothing in the end. It's a result of his arrogance and lack of effort, thinking he could land a big catch without trying. As a result, Tony lost his wife, his home, and his new fiancée in an instant. All that remained was his considerable debt. Finally, he said to me, "Hey, let's give it another try. You're the one for me, after all." Such a desperate statement. But without it, he would have an even more boring life than before. However, as far as I'm concerned, he no longer means anything to me. But you would say you were just with me because you had no choice, right? Don't worry about me. I'll be fine, I replied casually and decided to end the call. His calls continued, but they were so annoying that I blocked his number. Since then, he has been evicted from the apartment and lives in a shabby place, struggling with debt. He works from morning till night, but another hardship hit him. Hillary's acquaintances, tough-looking guys, found out where he lived and started threatening him. "You're going to pay the compensation she's being charged with too." While their methods are forceful, what they say isn't unreasonable. After all, Hillary was deceived. Thus, Tony's debt only grew. Now he's so dispirited that no one wants anything to do with him. As for me, I'm in good health, free from major stress. The episodes have stopped, and overcoming this huge obstacle has perhaps made me mentally stronger. My office work no longer suffers, and my parents are happy. Now I focus on not stressing myself and being honest with my feelings. When asked about my next relationship, I think I'll stay away from it for a while. Work has become enjoyable, and I find it fulfilling. Before thinking about romance, I plan to travel, something I couldn't do before due to my health concerns.